What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and it's time to jump back in the DeLorean, fly back to 1955, and catch up with myself and Dave as we carry on our Back to the Future retrospective. In the last episode, just in case you missed it, we covered off the first film, the 1985 Back to the Future. In this part, we're going to jump forward a little bit. We're going to jump to 1989, and we're going to be kicking off with Back to the Future Part 2 and going straight, almost like they did, to Back to the Future Part 3. So, jump on board and let's go back in time.
So they ended up getting into a bit of trouble, really. They didn't, or not trouble, but with the casting. So Marty's girlfriend, they ended up creating a rod for their own back at the end there.
Well, this was it. So they'd obviously hired Claudia Wells to play Jennifer in the first film, and she's very attractive and she's very good and that sort of thing. But they seemed to think, she was going to play a bigger part in the second film, and I'm not sure why. But they go off and they recast and they bring in Elizabeth Shue. And so for the start of the second film, they have to reshoot the end of the first film.
Yeah.
But it's pretty well done. I mean, there's things on YouTube where you can see them next to each other for comparison. And they're pretty close. They did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even have to acknowledge it, really. She just turns up and, the hair's the same, the clothes are the same and everything. And it's only, I guess this was still, this was kind of your peak home video time, wasn't it? But there was no internet or anything, so unless you had the video and watched it to death, only if you weren't being that eagle-eyed, you wouldn't even notice, would you?
Well, I didn't notice till I bought the when it was on the Blu-ray, not the Blu-ray, when I bought the DVD package quite a while ago. But for years, I'd never noticed, and then it wasn't until sort of like you go, oh yeah, it's two different women. How bizarre!
And I think especially because Elizabeth Shue hadn't been in that much at this point, but obviously she went on to become quite a bit bigger and more recognisable, I think. And so probably that helps her to be more instantly recognisable as someone different.
Yes.
But what was her name? Claudia Wells.
Claudia Wells.
Yeah.
Was Jennifer in the first film? Yeah.
So I can't remember which year it was. I guess it must have been 2015. So I went down to London Film and Comic Con, and it was just one of those. I'm not one of these people who looks and say, "Oh, this creator's there." I might take a cursory glance, but I'm not gonna go and single people out or anything. I just like, or I haven't. Well, certainly haven't this year, but I haven't been to many Comic Cons of late. But I just like to go and just whoever's there, I'll make up my mind who I want to see at the time. It only happened to be the 30th anniversary of Back to the Future, so they had a load of the cast there. Michael J. Fox was there. Christopher Lloyd wasn't there, but Claudia Wells was there, and I got the distinct feeling there was something romantic that had happened between her and Marty in the past. Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, she was kind of just the way she was being at the time, and so I've no idea. That's pure speculation, just from going off, like a Q&A session with the cast. Thomas F. Wilson, he wasn't there as well, unfortunately, but a load of them were, and we got the guy who did the Earth Angel. He was there, and we had a bit of a rendition of that, a bit of a sing along. So yeah, it was good stuff. But yeah,
That's
so
quite cool.
there was definitely something with them two.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I say, it doesn't. You don't notice it in the in the film. And Elizabeth Shue's perfectly fine, and more importantly, like she's not in it a great
Yeah.
deal, so it doesn't really make much bloody difference.
Well,
Um,
that's where they kind of screwed up, really, isn't it? Because if they hadn't shot that scene, she wouldn't have gone to the future.
Yeah, well, it's funny because they have to address it in the first 5 minutes of part two, don't they? So
Yeah.
they actually do the sort of like Marty sort of as they go into the future, they travel through time, and he has to say, "Oh yeah, this is a time machine," and and then even Marty says, like, "Why did you bring her?" And it's like, "Well, she's already seen it," and it's like, "Yeah, but even as a kid, I was thinking, like, but all she's seen is a crazy DeLorean. Like she could have just." You could have just said, "I've got to go for a drive." Like, it's yeah. They clearly
Or,
made a bit of a rod for their own back.
I mean, obviously, I love this second one.
Mm.
But you don't, in order to influence the future, you don't actually have to go to the future. So
Yeah,
you could maybe write them a letter that they could open. We've seen that before in this.
yeah.
Or you could just give them a bit of advice. When it gets to this point, don't do it. Or, tomorrow you're going to want to race. Don't race.
Well, this is the thing. Actually, this is the really good point. Like, I came to the conclusion, having watched this, that Doc Brown initially is a bit of a selfish dick because all he wants to do is sort of to his own sort of self gain and all this other stuff. Like, he doesn't want to become rich and all this other stuff, and he's constantly sort of saying to Marty, like, "You can't benefit your own future." But having gone to the future, like, he clearly knows that Marty has a traffic accident at some point in the very near future
Yep.
in '85 that wrecks his hand and all this other stuff, but has no intention of doing anything about it. Yet he's willing to travel to the future to save Marty's kids. You're like, isn't Marty supposed to be one of your best friends? You're willing to change the future, but not your best friend's future. Like, yeah, it's a bit weird.
He gets
Um,
even worse in the third one because he's talking about, he doesn't want to interrupt, he can't mess with the space time continuum. But Clara bats her eyelids at him and he thinks he can get his end away. And he's like, right, well,
yeah,
I'm going to stay here. I'm going to
yeah.
stick around a
Well,
bit.
even Marty calls him out in the third one because he keeps saying that, and Marty's like, "But what about the future?" And he's like, "Yeah, no, you're right, no, I'm fine. I'll have a cold shower and I'll be fine. Don't worry." Yeah, but like I say, they go to the future, and it's we are now recording this obviously in 2020, and they go to 2015. It's a very different 2015. Now the thing is, this film came out in 1989, and 1989 was sort of like my birth into cinema, like real birth. So I remember going to the cinema more times than ever before in '89. There were so many films, and this is one of the ones I saw at the cinema. I saw this on the big screen. And I remember seeing 2015 then as a kid and going like, wow. And then you sort of think it's only sort of 26 sort of years. Well, at that point, it's meant to be 30 years from 85, but by that point, it'd be like 25, 26 years in the future. And I'm like, you look back and go, you're not going to have flying cars in 26 years.
But don't forget, I mean, 30 years is enough to forget that the Jedi ever existed as an ancient religion. So
that's true. Yeah.
I think
A lot
30
happens.
years was,
A
complete.
lot happens. Yeah.
It's equivalent of like a century or something, I think.
But you do, like, you see the future. What are your thoughts on this future then, on this version of 2015?
I mean, interestingly, it starts off a bit Blade Runner-y, doesn't it? They appear in the nighttime. You got all the flying cars, lots and lots of traffic. The rain's beating down as well. It feels quite dark and atmospheric. But I mean, they got a few things right, didn't they? I think there's things that should have been taken up. Obviously, the flying hoverboards is the one that everyone cites as being, we want them.
Yeah.
give them to us. But when they find Jennifer and they take her back home, you have the whole like fingerprint door lock.
Mm.
I thought, that's a really cool idea, and I'm sure you can probably buy them now. I don't know, but they're not widely in use, are they? And I think something like that wouldn't. That's almost like a Black Mirror type future, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's not that inconceivable. But no, I personally I can't take off my nostalgic lenses for this one either, because like you know, the late 80s, this is peak when I'm like, you know, just loving movies, and
Yeah.
you know, I have a lot of fond memories of this one.
No, I do. And I think you're right about getting some of the stuff right. I mean, we all love the 80s were big in 2015. I love it when he goes to the 80s bar, the 80s diner. And
Yeah,
there's several things in this to really call out. I love the greatest the TVs, they're like robots, but you have like someone's being served by Michael Jackson. Yeah, that wouldn't have happened in 2015.
fucking
Sorry,
hell.
different. But I like the fact that you get sort of Ronald Reagan and I think it's supposed to be the leader of Iran. I can't remember his name.
Oh,
But you get
yeah.
those really great gags. But the best one, and this is where you start to get call forwards, foreshadowing
Hmm.
of the future. Is one of the first things is there's a console game or a arcade game in there, and it's like a shooting game, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you got two kids. One of them, Elijah Wood, a
Oh,
little
really? I
hobbit.
didn't notice that.
Yeah. One of those kids is Elijah Wood. The one that says that's you have to use your hands. That's for babies. That's
Yeah,
Elijah
yeah.
Wood.
Oh,
And
blimey.
he does the sharpshooting, doesn't he? And it's a cowboy
Yeah.
shooting range. So that's the first thing to sort of say. That's the foreshadowing. Um, anyway, he's got to pretend to be his son, Marty Jr., and you get the replay of the 55 diner with Griff, Biff Tannen's grandson, which now suggests that Biff has had kids, or it's never addressed. So you never meet Biff's kids, but Biff has got a grandkid. What do you think about this? And does this play as well in 2 as it does in 1?
I think the quick answer is no. I think the thing is, when we go like a few years in the future, it's a bit of a trope that everyone dresses like douchebags.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
what he's wearing is ridiculous, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
it doesn't matter what future you envisage. No one is wearing a hat like that. you know?
Yeah.
And there's something off, I find, of all the different variations of Biff that he plays. I think this is probably my least favorite Biff. Just the way he talks, he's trying to talk in that
Mm.
kind of higher tone. It's very up and down, the tone of his voice. I think it doesn't work quite as well. But I remember at the time just thinking, wow, this is so clever. And,
Yeah.
and you've got Marty playing his younger self at the time, and again, apart from his facial expressions, it's not quite a Christopher Reeve thing where he genuinely seems to transform before your eyes.
Mm.
But you can see his mannerisms, the way he's walking, and everything is very, very different. And I guess without thinking about it too much at the time when I was watching as a kid, I just took it as like, wow, that's really different. But it is that's acting, isn't it?
Mm.
The fact that he can transform into this different person. So yeah, I do enjoy it, but not as much as the first one.
No, I totally agree. It's got some great moments. I love the hoverboards. It's a beat for beat replay, isn't it? Really, but
Yeah.
now they've got the hoverboards, and again, I kind of like Griff's like backup bullies. The one that's got the soundboard on his chest, so when he calls him chicken, he sort of he's got the sound there. And I also like the fact that they chase him around, and he ends up going over the water in front of the clock tower, which has now become the courthouse. And the only way to is you can't do that unless you've got power. And then you sort of find out that Griff's got this thing called the bulldog or the pit bull.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
a hoverboard with jets on the back and stuff, and they can hook onto it, and they're sort of like they hover around. There is some really cool ideas for the future. Like I really like it. The one thing I would say is about the future, just as a side point, is flying cars are never going to happen for one simple reason. We have stupid accidents in 2 dimensions. If you're going to add a third in, you're in for all kinds of problems.
Yeah, I think Phantom Menace in particular takes
Yeah.
this scene and multiplies it, a few more times, doesn't it? And
Yes.
I remember thinking that exact same thought, that I can't wrap my head around that third dimension. Being able to go up and down, changing
Yeah.
lanes up and down as well as left and right. I don't think my brain would be able to handle that, and I don't think anyone else's. I think ultimately, tangenting, is that a word?
Tangentially, yeah.
Tangentially. I mean, driverless cars will come way before
Yeah.
that, won't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, yeah. But it's good. Like I say, the whole point was that his son Marty Junior was going to be conned into joining some attack on the courthouse and was going to get caught and go to jail, and it was going to be the sort of the downfall of the McFly family. And he stops that. He changes the future. So they're gonna go home now. That's it. They've done their bit. But to sort of, I don't know, take slight advantage of the future, Marty goes to an antique shop and buys what's it called? What's it?
The
Sports
sports
almanac.
almanac.
Yeah, and it's got all the. It's incredibly thin for a book that's got all the sports results for 50 years. Um, Even like college basketball, as we find out later. I know. Just I don't know if you know about this. There's what they call. There's a cricket. Every year they do a cricket thing that's all the scores and all the sort of statistics for cricket.
All right.
A mate of mine used to get them, and they're about like 1,000 pages, like these thick things. I forget what they're called now, but yeah, it's these almanac, and he's basically going to sort of like have a bit of a sort of a dabble on the ponies or whatever, and that becomes the film's MacGuffin, and also the film's lesson. I think each film has sort of like a lesson, isn't it, about sort of the first one I suppose is sort of like time travel sort of enables someone to sort of be yourself, stand up for yourself, and live your dreams and that sort of thing. The first one's basically sort of don't be a selfish prick. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, because it's in this second one. You mentioned it there. So they call Marty out for being a chicken. And then that's his trigger word. He can't have anyone thinking he's a chicken. And that gets replayed over the second and third one. But it didn't appear anywhere in the first one.
No.
And I can't, I'm going to be a bit bloody toxic nerdy here. So, he basically, he avoids getting his kid sent to prison. So he doesn't join the gang. But again, the doc is being a bit of a twat here, because his kid is such a little dweeb, because Marty is in such a bad place. We see him get fired by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
And, but this all traces back. He hasn't done his root cause analysis here, has he?
Nope.
It all traces back to that accident. So he fixes that accident that literally happens after he's come back from the future.
Yeah.
And all of that timeline is reset. I'm going to stop thinking about it there, because it doesn't stack up.
You're right. Basically, part 2 and part 3 could have all been fixed if Doc had travelled like 20, instead of going 30 years into the future, had just travelled 20 minutes into the future and just said to Marty, like, "Oh, don't take your truck out right now.
Yeah.
Save your truck. Take it out this evening. Take it out tomorrow. I'm telling you right now. I know, right? Just trust me on this one. Don't. There you go. Dealt with.
Happy days.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, he's supposed to learn the lesson, though, isn't he? He's supposed to learn this lesson of sort of like keep you calm and don't be sort of bothered by what other people think of you. But still, like there are easier ways of doing time travel. But I do like this idea that again he gets called out, and then they find out that Jennifer has been identified by the police and taken back to what's it called where they live, the suburb.
Oh, I can't remember now.
I don't know, basically, it comes up again and again, doesn't it?
It's not Hill Valley, is it?
Hill Valley's the town. It doesn't matter. But it takes her home, and obviously they get her in the house. So then Marty and Doc have got to break in to get her out again. And you see this where they use the old age makeup, and also that this is almost like an Eddie Murphy thing, because obviously he played all different characters in sort of Coming to America and the Clumps, or what it was called. And so you get Marty. Marty playing himself in. I must say the old age makeup in these films is terrible.
Yeah.
But you get an old age Marty and him playing both his son and his daughter.
It's wrong, that, isn't it? It just every time I
Yeah.
see it, you know, I looks terrible.
Yeah, and this is where I'm thinking, like, why don't you just use Elizabeth Shue and put some different makeup on her? Like, would that not have worked better? But I'm not sure if it's supposed to be funny. That's the thing. Is it that, oh, look, are we supposed to recognise that it's Michael J. Fox in drag? I'm never sure if it's supposed to be played for laughs or they're just trying to make a point. I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, it's not really funny, is it?
No.
I guess I don't know because they do that as over and over again, don't they? You know, they have the same characters playing different people. So yeah, I honestly don't know.
No. Yeah, you have this whole thing, and she comes at the house. Like you say, Marty gets fired by something he's done with Flea and
Needles.
Needles. That's it. And again, like he gets tracked. You get the McFly, and the Asian gentleman sort of fires him. It's all. I mean, it's all good. It's all sort of fine. It's interesting. But basically, all that is there as a distraction to sort of facilitate the fact that Biff, old age Biff, 2015 Biff, has now travelled. He's found the sports almanac and travelled back to 1955 and has given it to himself. And then he obviously brings the DeLorean back, and sort of has a heart attack, or basically sort of dies in this sort of. And this is where I'm going to get. I could get nerdy. In fact, no, I'm going to do it. Sod it. So we see him go back in time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he goes back to 1955, gives his young Biff his sports almanac, and then returns the DeLorean. But he manages to return the DeLorean to the timeline that we are still in.
It doesn't make sense, does it? That
No.
timeline should have,
The rad doesn't exist.
Yeah, it should have just disappeared, shouldn't it? Under the Back to the Future timeline rules.
It doesn't exist anymore because none of those events have now happened or in a different. So, but obviously he brings it back, and then Marty and Doc travel back to 1985 and find a very, very different 1985, and this is where it's very Trump, very sort of like 80s 90s Trump. You have Tannen Towers, or Biff. I thought they call it Biff Towers, or Tannen.
It's basically Trump Towers, isn't it?
Trump Towers, yeah. And he's basically turned Hill Valley into a bit of a cesspit, hasn't he?
Yeah. It's pretty horrible. This is where you get the proper dystopian future, don't you? And it's, he's basically old Biff from 2015 had heard this whole conversation around the sports almanac and picked it up, nicked the time machine, and then just won it. But Scott, what I love, again, the advantage of kind of shooting your sequels kind of back to back, when they're playing the little bit of video footage, outside the towers, it goes on about Biff's history in that, and it goes back to Mad Dog Tannen. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, again, this whole section, this 1985, gives a load of stuff about the sort of the Western, the whole Western thing is really played. You get Mad Dog Buford Tannen. You then get the fact that they're watching Fistful of Dollars with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
He uses the sort of the metal bulletproof vest.
Yeah,
is shown here, and also when they go to visit George McFly's grave.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same graveyard that they eventually see Doc Brown's tombstone in later on.
Right,
at the end in part 3. So they really are layering in the sort of the connections here. This is really well done, I think.
Yeah, you know what? Other than a bit of dramatic effect, I never really got why. So he wakes up and Lorraine, she's got massive breast implants, hasn't she?
And this is another thing I was going to say. I like to do is every time he wakes up to Leah Thompson. It's like you're back in good old 1955, or you're back on good old floor 29. There's always a that same sort of comment is made. So I quite like it. Quite funny.
I do have to say, at this Comic Con panel, Leah Thompson has aged very well, and if I
Yeah.
could wake up from unconsciousness to Leah Thompson, I think I'd die happy, Scott. I think I'd be
Yeah.
done. I'd be like, yep.
I'm always going to say the thing with Leah Thompson. She seems like an adventurous lady. She almost fucked a duck in Howard the Duck. So she's clearly up for anything.
Yeah, well, there is that. Oh, crikey, she was hot in that. But anyway, stop being lechy. Yeah, so I'd kind of forgotten about all. You're right. There's loads of Western links, isn't there?
Mm.
But where was I going with that? So Lorraine. Oh yeah, so she tells Marty that that George had died. Why did he have to go to the grave?
Yeah, to prove it.
It's like, I don't believe you. I'm going to go right to the grave, and Doc Brown's just going to turn up at the same time as well. So he creates a bit of dramatic effect, but again, once you've got that question in your head, you can't kind of let go of it.
I think, if anything, like you say, it's there more than anything to create that. There's a shot where he turns around and the wind's like whipping at them and everything. And he turns around and it's Doc Brown that sort of like meets him there, and it's quite a cool shot. But like you say, it's a little bit superfluous, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the fact as well that they do this, because you get two headlines, don't you? You get George McFly, local author George McFly murdered, and then was it like local scientist committed?
Committed, yeah.
And there now. So in the first film, you had the family photo, as people were fading, and then this is the headlines. You've got to see the headlines change. Although, actually, I took a photo. Sorry, going back to this. When he goes through, he stops the sort of the attack on the courthouse. This is going to show how they couldn't tell the future. In the headlines, it's USA Today, and it says about some kids have done this and that's what. And there's headlines all around it for different bits and pieces. One of them sticks out because it says Queen Diana visits Washington.
Oh dear, that didn't age well, did it?
Yeah. I've never spotted it before, and I spotted this one. I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." From 1989. But yeah. So anyway, going back to they've got these things, and you now got this setup of, and Doc's clearly done his research and found all these photos and stuff in a very quick time. It's obviously he said he broke into the library, and they established that that Tannen, Biff Tannen in 1955 has got the sports almanac, and he basically won all that money at the races. You've already seen this in that video, but Doc's obviously established it. He didn't see the video, and obviously that means they've got to go back to 1955 to get the sports almanac back. Which is sort of the third act of the film. So how do you feel about this? That this film really does travel through time. It sort of goes all forwards, backwards to the present, different alternate timelines.
Yeah, I think again, I guess there's my own perspective, and then I'll give my son's. I think, I mean, my son's like 10 now, so I think he was confused by it, especially because 2015. The future for us is in the past as well. So, it's all these arbitrary dates, really. So, and the fashion and everything is probably lost on him a little bit as well. But I thought, and I still think, even though we can pick nits in different inconsistencies, I remember thinking at the time, wow, this is just so clever. Like how they're knitting in the previous film. And you can see footage from not footage, but the same scenes unfold from slightly different angles. I just thought it was amazing, and I still think this second one even though it's not as tight as the first one, is probably my favourite. And a lot of it has to do with this third act.
I agree. I think that the thing with this film is, like I say, the one thing I like about it, especially this one, is there's so many left turns in it. It's this second one is like a proper adventure. Like it goes, like it never stops. Like it's they go to 2015, and you sort of you see the future, and you've got all these like crazy things going on there. Like all these mad ideas, flying cars, hoverboards, Jaws 19. All these amazing things, that these ideas for the future. And then you get this idea of like an alternate 1985, and it's really sort of like, if anything, it's a dark version of the American dream, isn't it? And that's how it's played out. And it's almost like this weird critique of, like, I'm not going to get political, but of like Reagan era America, where they're just like, because Biff marries his high school girlfriend. It's clear, like, you said he was rapey in the first one. Like, he's clearly kidnapped her and killed her husband.
He's gone all Bluto, hasn't he?
Yeah, like, it's crazy. But then, like, he's bought out all this stuff, and he's, he says that, or I was going to say one thing: God bless America, because he's sort of like overturned gambling laws for Hill Valley. And it's sort of like this dark version of the American dream, and how it's just sort of like fucked everybody else up.
It's almost like an Alan Moore kind of Watchmen universe, isn't
it?
That one?
I think that midsection, like, it's really good. But like you say, when you start to look at it, it really is a real sort of like, there's much more to it than I think it gets given credit for. And then when you're done with that, they're like, all right, we're going back to 1955, and we're going to not just replay, but we're now going to give you extra information about everything that was going on in the first film. It's brilliant. I love it. I think it's so well done.
Yeah.
Like you say, the way they do some of the footage, and they've obviously had to reshoot some of it, and that sort of thing. And there's other bits where it's blue screened in, and it doesn't quite look. When you look at it now with a modern eye, you sort of go, oh, some of that overlaying isn't perfect, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. I think it stands up pretty well on the Blu-ray, and I think the things that jar with me a little bit more, like, when old Biff is having the conversation with his younger self, and Marty's on the back seat. It's like, there is no way on this earth that he's not going to see Marty, especially when they throw the almanac on the back seat and he goes and picks it up. And then when they're driving off, he's literally on the back seat and he's on the walkie-talkie to Doc. Yeah. He's like, Doc! It's like...
He's whisper shouting, isn't he? It's like, he can clearly hear you, like, unless he's got something like, really sort of... something loud on the radio.
He's got partial deafness, I think. So it's little things like that, again, I'm loving the whole movie. I'm loving this middle section, but the final act is the rousing one, isn't it? You get all the Alan Silvestri music pumping there. But it's just those things that just like, come on, that's a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, there's one of the things I say. One of the things I really like about this is again just the little things that they seem to keep throwing in. That, like, it's not really until this time or recent I've really noticed some of these things. And one of them is, as we've said, like, you have Biff and then he has a grandson. Yeah, you never meet his kids. But then in the 55 in 2, you also find out he lives with his grandma and you never see anything about his parents. So there's almost like some weird, I don't know how they procreate or but the Tannins seem to miss a generation. I don't know.
Cloning.
Yeah, it must be. So they all look like Thomas F. Wilson. But yeah, that's another great touch. Like, he lives with his grandma. So where are his parents? There's that sort of thing. And again, like, you get to see the fact that, like, they bring back like Billy Zane and the same guys to play his crew in both corrupted 1985 and then back in 55 and stuff like that. Like, really cool little moments and how they all play out. And then again, like you say, the fact that how they use, was it Ooh La La, is the sort of the 55 porno match.
La.
Yeah. And all that sort of like that, all that being played out in the background. and you see George punching Biff from a distance, and yeah, it's just really, it is really, again, it's going back to that element. It's really satisfying, and there's a there's a great bit when you do see Biff sort of punched out, and he's got the people all around him, and Marty comes to steal
The almanac.
the almanac, and he punches him out again.
Yeah.
And you have that sort of like weird looking guy who sort of goes, I think he stole his wallet. He
Yeah.
stole his wallet. I think he stole his wallet. And then when Biff wakes up, he sort of says, I think he stole your wallet. I think he stole his wallet. Little gags like that, I don't know. They're silly, but again, it's just they're quite good fun. But yeah, it is. It's really well done, actually.
Now I'm trying to think now, because he actually, he gets called Chicken Marty again, doesn't he? But then he gets knocked out, and then he actually finds he sees he's nicked his almanac.
Yes.
I'm trying to think.
But
Where
Biff.
Biff, yeah. So he takes the almanac back off him. I'm trying to
Well, he
think.
drives home. So Biff at that point decides, like, I've had enough of the under the sea dance, and he goes home. He jumps back in his car, and he has the almanac in the passenger seat.
Of
and
course,
that's where,
yeah.
Marty uses the hoverboard to sneak up along the side of the car to try and grab it, and that's when you get a really cool scene again where they use the hoverboard. And at no point is 1955 Biff going like, "What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
How is he hovering?" So yeah, and I like that again, because they travel. Like, he does a flip over the car and he chases him, and then Doc saves him by dropping the flags down, doesn't he? And
That's right. Yeah.
he pulls him up, and once again we get the manure scene for this film.
Yeah. I hate manure.
Yeah. And again, like within sort of 2 days, because I think the first one's been over 4 days, isn't it? So within like 2 or 3 days, Biff Tannen of 1955 has driven into a manure truck. Like, yeah. At that point, you just give up, wouldn't you? You'd be like, fuck it, I just can't. I'm not getting out again. I've had enough.
I think what this trilogy teaches us, if it's a good gag, tell it again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And then if possible, again.
Yeah. With the same actors playing different roles.
Yeah. Again, and this ending, because you do get to the ending of sort of, again, whether it's all done. He burns the almanac, and that eradicates that sort of the possibility of that future, and you see that the headlines change. What is it? Sort of author
Commended or something.
Commended, and then scientist awarded, isn't it? So sort of they change for much better sort of headlines.
Yeah.
Which is great. One thing, I'm going to sort of do one more sort of time travel knobby thing, all right? And we've already covered these things off. When they went back to 1985, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the dark dystopian 1985. There's a comment that Marty's been sent to a school in Sweden or Switzerland. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
He's in Hill Valley, okay? So did the version of him that has been at the school in Switzerland up until that point, did they just disappear? Or are there now two versions of him in that 1985 timeline? And the same with Doc Brown. Doc Brown's committed in a mental asylum somewhere. So has that version of Doc Brown disappeared to be replaced by this version of Doc Brown? Or are there now two versions in this timeline? Just something to chew over.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's lots of different theories, isn't there, with time travel? But
but this one doesn't have a consistent one.
Yeah, so it's whatever's convenient for the story.
Yeah.
I kind of prefer the kind of Avengers Endgame approach to time travel, where if you go and influence something in the past, that actually creates a new timeline. But the old one still continues to exist.
Yeah, you just like a divergent timeline.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just besides the point. It's just something to throw in there. But again, you get this really cool ending, and the things have changed, and also the storm is raging around them because this is the same night that, obviously, in the middle of Hill Valley, former Marty McFly and Doc Brown are doing the ending of the first film.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, Doc gets struck by lightning. He's hovering in the air in the car, and the DeLorean gets struck by lightning, thrown backwards, and you get the really cool sort of two sort of fire tracks go in a loop, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And he gets and he just disappears. And you're sort of left with this thing of Marty now being trapped in 1955 at the end of this film. So, what are your thoughts on this final little bit?
Again, I think it's great. You get that elation from Doc Brown. He's so happy. This experiment, this thing, he managed to generate his 1.21 gigawatts. He got Marty back off to the future, and there he turns up again.
Yeah.
It's like,
I sent you back to the future, and he's like, "Yes, but I'm back. I'm back from the future."
Yeah. I think it's brilliant, and I just think it was so clever, or it just felt so clever that they've recreated that scene, so we saw exactly what we saw in the first one, but then we get Marty legging it round the corner, and you're like, oh god, they must have reshot this whole thing, but I can't tell. It looks the same to me. So
it's done so well. I mean, the other thing to note is when Doc's gone, it starts to rain, and a guy turns up, and it's done all kinds of sinister. But then it turns out he's from the post office, and he gives Marty an envelope, and he's had it for 70+ years.
Yeah,
and you find out that Doc has been sent back to 1885. And again, like, this is all going back to the Old West, because Doc's even said at one point he'd love to visit the Old West. And when he's opens, he has like a briefcase full of money, doesn't he, from different periods?
Yeah.
There is one that says 1885 in there, so that it's all he's covered. When he went back, he'd actually have some money for the period. So yeah, it's it's this thing. This was the first. I remember going to see this in the cinema. Like, it's still got a vivid memory for me. I'm being sat there as the Odeon in Coventry, and you get the end of this film. As you say, you've had the bit. You know he's in 1885. You've got the letter, and he runs back to Doc on the main street of Hill Valley, and then like Doc faints, and then instead of saying like "to be continued" and that's it, and you're like, "Ooh, what's going to happen next?" This was the first time ever where I'm sat there, and the film ends, and it's on the blue. It's on the blue. I don't know is it on the Blu-ray? I don't know. It's on the DVD. It ends with a trailer for the next film.
Yeah, I remember that vividly as well in the cinema, and I'm like, what the hell? And that was definitely the first time I'd ever seen that, and I can't think if that's ever been done again.
I don't know, but it's like a legit part of the film, and it sort of it says like Doc and Marty will return in Back to the Future Part 3, and you're like, what? Oh my god, that's amazing! Like, they've already filmed it. Like, when am I getting this? Is it coming out next week?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is great, and I think we sort of skipped over it, but when the DeLorean it can't settle down, it gets struck by lightning. Before the guy turns up with his letter, I think you get just long enough to feel that mourning, that grief from Marty. Basically the second time in 2 movies he's had to watch the Doc die.
Yeah.
And I think they just let it hang long enough to make you think, oh, gutted. He's gone. He's really gone this time. Before they say, well, he's alive, but he's alive, in 1885, so he's dead now, but he's alive in 1885. So.
Yeah. I have to admit that, I mean, like, when we get to the end of this, right, the first film takes 4 days, and then I don't know, consecutively or chronologically, I suppose the second film takes a couple of days. And then he's in, then he ends up going back to 1885, and that takes a couple of days. So if you were to say, like, this is a 2-week period for Marty McFly, I mean, when he goes back to at the end of the third film, like, it's no time has passed. But like for him, this is say a 2-week period. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd have like PTSD.
100%.
From the amount of stress and like things and trauma that I've seen, like. Especially if you knew the thing. One of the things I'll say it now for the end of was before we get into 3. If you know, like, right, some nutter in Hill Valley can come up with a time machine, yeah, and it causes all this havoc, I would have nightmares for the rest of my life, thinking like, if Doc bloody Brown can do this, someone else can come up with the Fluxapath. Like this, so this is going to happen again, isn't it? Like I would be terrified that I would cease to exist. I'd have some sort of like existential crisis. That like this whole thing is going to be like I'm just on the precipice of being eradicated from time all the time.
I don't think Marty would have PTSD for that. But the things that he's been through, he's been knocked over in 1955. He got
Mm,
bashed to the head there. He's contemplated, if only for a second, to have sex with his mum.
yeah.
He's nearly been killed multiple times. He's seen a dystopian future, and
Mm,
how horrible things can go. The whole butterfly effect, just one little thing can change it massively. So you'd have a fear of what could happen in the future. So, yeah, there are a lot of things for him to be terrified about.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and to top it off, we'll get into 3 in a minute when they almost hang him. So he almost gets hung as
Yeah.
well. So it's not a fun time. So he does. We go through 2, and it ends with him finding Doc, and then literally like 3 picks up and carries on. Like starts with them, and that's happened, and it's the next morning, and they're sort of at Doc Brown's house in 1955, and they just picks up and goes. Really, isn't it? Like it's like
Yeah, so we mentioned one of your favorites, and one of my favorites as well. So Indiana Jones, that was
mm,
inspired by a lot of the old TV serials, wasn't it? And it almost
yes,
feels
yeah,
like that, where the start of the movie feels like the beginning of a serial. It's just picking up a story from the previous one. And so, yeah, again, I can't think of too many movies that do that. But yeah, it's just like a continuation, isn't it? Join
well,
us back
even
again
more.
next week.
Yeah, well, even more so than Star Wars. Like they call Star Wars is like episode. Was it like episode like 4, 5, and 6 is the original trilogy because that was the idea. It was supposed to be like you felt like you were in the middle of like a movie serial, but there's like big gaps of time between those films.
Yeah.
Um, this is the one this is the one that sort of like really feels like same bat time, same bat channel, um, kind of continuation. Like no other film series I know or I can think of finishes on this kind of cliffhanger where you're like, um, no, that that's a continuation. It's got to carry on.
Yeah.
Other than say maybe Crank, I think Crank is the only one I can think of where it literally ends and finish and start. The next one starts at the same point. So I could be wrong.
I honestly haven't watched Crank. I know, the premise, but that I do want to watch them at some point. But they're not high on my list, if I'm honest.
I recommend them when you've got some. Yeah, don't dedicate yourself to any time to them, but if you've got some spare time and a couple of beers, they're probably worth some time. But anyway, yeah. So going back to this, so Back to Future 3. So like again, it's sort of you just get this whole sort of like wealth of information. In the first sort of like 15 minutes, it's sort of like the whole thing's set up, isn't it? You sort of you find out that he's back in 1885. He's buried the DeLorean somewhere. He's happy, but then you find out that he's going to be shot over a matter of $80, and it's going to be Buford Tannen that kills him. And it's basically sort of they go right. Here's the plot,
Yeah.
and now you can enjoy it. Like, don't worry about this so much anymore. Just crack on.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about sort of the way it's set up and for number 3?
Well, it's funny how these things work out at times. So, got to admit, and I'm not sure when this episode's going to come out, and we've recorded a few weeks ahead for the VHS as well. And spoilers for that, we look at Tombstone, but I let it loose there that I really don't like westerns. And it's from being a kid. I think I blame Bonanza mostly. But growing up as a kid, I remember being around at my nan's so many times, and there'd be a chuffing western on the TV. And as far as I'm concerned, it's just all the bloody same. Guys riding around on horses, shooting at each other. There's a bit of a bra brawl somewhere in there. They never grabbed me at all. Now, in that recording, I was saying I'm going to challenge myself. And actually, last night I watched Once Upon a Time in the West. Got to say,
Oh, okay.
not
Wow,
bad.
my God, you jumped in deep there, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I thought, if you're going to go for it, and again, I'm a massive Tarantino fan, so I know,
Yeah.
that he's homaged a lot of these greats. So, I thought I'd go in Sergio Leone classic, and yeah, must admit, did enjoy it. I loved the cinematography. I think just the epicness of it, was great. But
If you should, I'm going to say if you like that, and because that one is, I would say, epic, ponderous, but has great moments. I think Henry Fonda's amazing in it, and what's his name, Death Wish.
Charles Bronson.
Charles Bronson is also very laconic and very great in it. Is what he is.
Hmm.
But I still think The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is by far a better film and looks better and has got some of the most iconic sort of cinematography and moments in it. If you think that was good, seriously go check that out.
See, I,
Just say,
I do remember a bit of that. I remember like, hey, Blandy.
yeah.
I just remember him, and obviously the music is iconic for that. So again, I have seen these things as a kid, but again,
Mm.
it builds up. It's built up in my mind over the last 30 years, probably that I just really don't like westerns. So for me, this is my least favorite of the
Mm.
trilogy. But I did watch this after Tombstone, and I was kind of I'm almost acknowledging what I think is my unconscious bias.
Mm.
I'm like, look, just try and enjoy it. I know it's a western, but try and go with it. And so, but even despite that, I still think for me this is the weakest one of the trilogy. But it still is good. It's still enjoyable. It's still all the same kind of characters. I I find it very strange that basically Michael J. Fox is playing, his great grandfather.
Yeah.
But then you've got Leah Thompson, and I'm like, hang about, you got Michael J. Fox. Leah Thompson was his mum.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this whole, because she says again, you have that moment when he wakes up, doesn't it? Because he sort of he gets chased by Indians or whatever, and he gets found. He cracks his head on the fence, and then when he wakes up, it's like you're safe now on the McFly farm, and
Yeah,
you're sort of like, and again it plays that moment. He's like, the McFly farm, and it is weird, like you say. It's like, it's a great gag, and they're going to play it again and again and again. But it makes no sense. Like, this whole thing of like, wow, your great grandparents look a lot like your parents. Like,
yeah. It's
is
very
Hill
weird.
Valley a very small place?
It absolutely is. And I tell you what else doesn't make sense as well. So when he goes back, and they're in
Mm.
the middle of a drive-in theater for some reason, and then I think it's just for that effect of seeing the kind of cardboard Indians, and then
Yes.
you get the actual Indians. I think it's for that. But the Indians just carry on as if the car's kind of invisible.
Yeah, ignore it.
Just like,
At
holy
no point.
fucking shit, what is that?
Yeah, at no point. Yeah, at no point does any, because I guess like the cavalry come over, like no one has seen it from a distance or anything, and gone like, yeah, there was this crazy thing we saw in the, like, fuck knows what it was.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you would think it was an act of God or so. You just
yeah,
wouldn't even know how to put it into words. I guess. Well, actually, I guess you would have to say it was something like a train that ran on no tracks. That's
yeah,
the only way you
yeah.
kind of rationalize it.
Um, but yeah, that's obviously the whole start of it, and the thing. And again, like Michael J. Fox gets to dabble with an Irish accent, and dabble's probably the best way to put it.
I like
Um,
the fact they make him ginger as well, because
yeah,
he's Irish. And then,
yeah,
and then as soon as they get a few generations in, the gingerness just goes.
yeah. Yeah, the Leah Thompson never leaves, but the gingerness is
Yeah.
bred out of them. Um, but again, like, it's that thing of like, one of the things I find quite interesting is, again, that this whole thing of being called chicken, and it's obviously the theme of these two films, because you do go back and you find that actually his ancestors were really sort of like quite chill and were like,
Yeah.
what's it matter what these people think of you? Like, you just got to live your life. And he obviously learns that lesson from it. It's quite interesting to see that he learns that lesson for the future from his ancestors. I think that's quite a nice touch.
That is
Um,
good. I'd never quite joined that up, but you're right. You're right. He does have to go back to 1885 to finally learn the lesson. Mind you, I say
mm,
finally. It
Yeah,
does feel a bit crowbarred in, that whole chicken
yeah.
thing.
It has sort of come out of nowhere for the second film. But I mean, you say this is a Western, but I also like the fact it takes the mick out of Western tropes. Like, it's clear that like it takes the mick out of these sort of things. Like you start with Doc Brown and 55 dresses him in what you'd probably see on sort of like, Howdy Doody or some other sort of ridiculous 50s Western with the tassels and the silly boots. And then when he gets back, it's all really drab and dirty and sort of like, not these crazy colours. Um, and obviously then you find out that like Doc Brown has gone back, become a blacksmith, but he's also managed to manufacture some crazy rifle for his own protection, um, and stuff like that. So it does take the mick out of these tropes, of the Western, of the baddie as well, the outlaw, sort of like with the Buford Mad Dog Tannen, and the fact like he continues as well the Tannen thing of not being able to get the phrases right, sort of
Yeah.
that's been going throughout. So there's some great little gags in there like that, and the fact that as well, like they make him dance like shooting at his feet, you know.
He does the
So,
old moonwalking.
so he does a Michael Jackson dance, and then which is great. And so and then It's almost like they're looking to replay the bit with the hoverboard, because he runs out, doesn't he? That's it. Then he gets the spit down him, which is
Mhm.
then. And then they finally break the cycle because he runs out as if he's going to do something. There's no skateboard, there's no hoverboard in 1885, so he's a bit like, shit. And so he gets lassoed and literally sort of dragged through town and almost hung.
Yeah.
So that this again, the cycles start to break in the third film. They're trying to play it differently. So they're playing with tropes more in this one. And it was brave. I mean, to do a western in the 80s would have been quite, or in the early 90s, I should say, at this point. It's pretty brave because it could have been an absolute flop. And I know some people do consider it to be the worst of the three, as you've said. I really enjoy this film. I'm a bit more fond of westerns.
And I think it's my bias of not liking westerns that
Mm.
goes towards thinking this is the worst one or my least favorite. What I would say is I think this is one of my favorite Biffs. Mad Dog
Yeah, yeah.
Tannen again. The makeup and obviously in Hollywood they're pretty good, aren't they, at doing
Mm.
westerns? They did them for a long time, so the
Yeah.
makeup and everything. He looks like he could be out of one of those epic westerns, and he again he gives almost the same Biff performance but slightly different.
Mm.
And I think, it's such an underrated thing because he could kind of, it's the same guy and he could play it exactly like Biff in 1955, but with makeup on, dressed up like a cowboy. But he doesn't. It is slightly different. So, yeah, hats off to him there. I think he plays again a really good baddie in this one.
He does. Well, the thing I'd say about Thomas F. Wilson for this is going back and watching it. It's not just sort of like you say he plays them different, but he does really do some good body work. I mean, not just being old and hunched and all that kind of stuff, but his let's call it modern Biff
Hmm.
has a certain sort of like a swagger. So that when he's in 1955, like he knows he's the biggest dog in the yard, so he has a real swagger and a confidence and a cockiness and all this sort of stuff. And he has a certain way he moves. And even when you see him when he's older, at the start of the first film, like he
Hmm.
still has that, he sort of was it like don't know.
Arrogance.
Yeah, but this like don't like shoes untied, and he flips his nose and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
in the terrible fifth, in the awful 85, when you see him, he's got that same thing again, a real sort of arrogance and all that sort of. But when he's playing Buford, he's more. He has he walks with sort of like slightly hunched over. He walks with a sort of in a different. He walks a different way. He carries himself different. Sort of like that. He works hard to make it be a Tannen, but not like you say, not a replay of what he's done before.
yeah.
And I think he's just really, it just goes on. It's not one of the things that people like, rave about the films, but I just think he does a fantastic job. I think it's really worth calling out.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about him being the MVP before, but I
Mm,
think he's certainly the one who does the most work, doesn't he?
Mm.
And I guess you could say Michael J. Fox dresses up as a few different people, but he only ever gets a few lines, when he's dressing up as his daughter and things like that. And he's trying to put on the Irish accent in this one. But I think for the range, I think Thomas F. Wilson, he gets the prize for me for this trilogy.
Yeah, definitely. I think he does a great job, and all power to him for it. But you do get back, obviously he meets Doc. Doc saves him from being hung, and you find out that the $80 is because, and I love this, it's because Doc has shoed one of Tannen's horses. The horse then thrown a shoe and thrown Tannen, and he's lost a bottle of whiskey. But he hadn't actually paid for the shoe in the first place. But Buford, being what he is, had shot the horse and lost the bottle of whiskey, so he blames Doc for that.
Yeah. Again, it just adds to, he's a bit of a C next Tuesday, isn't he?
Yeah. And so, then he meets Mrs. And obviously Doc says, you shouldn't have come back. But he lets him know that he's going to be shot, so they have to leave. And they start to come up with different ways of how they can do it. Blah blah blah. But then they get the wrinkle in the whole thing, as you've said before, is they get to meet. It's Mary Steenburgen who plays Clara Clayton.
Yeah.
And again, sort of her wagon's gone crazy, horses have gone crazy. She's running off, and Doc saves her. And again, you get a lovely little offhanded thing where you sort of you find out that ravine in Marty's future or Marty's existence is called Clayton Ravine.
Yeah.
Because of a teacher that went in there in 1885, and obviously so she was supposed to go into that ravine, and in doing so, straight away they've already changed the future. So, Doc's, like you said, if Doc thinks he's going to get his end away, he's less bothered about changing the future.
Yeah, exactly. For his own selfish purposes, he's not bothered about the space-time continuum. So
No.
I am going to get quite abstract now. Now, have you seen Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
I have, yes.
I think, I have to have a word with Steve from Superhero for Dummies, because on the latest version, he was waxing lyrical about, it was a cyborg episode. And he says something like, if you're not under the age of 6, you shouldn't be watching Teen Titans Go. Honestly, I love it.
Yeah.
It's mainly because the kids have it on, but it is genuinely funny. And I took them to the cinema to watch it. And that is phenomenally dark.
Yeah.
They try and right the wrongs, so they go and save the Waynes from being killed. But of course, the Waynes being killed is what is the catalyst to make Bruce Wayne become Batman.
If I remember right, they want to stop all the origin stories because they want to be the superheroes.
Their own movie.
Yeah. My favourite one is when they save Krypton and it becomes like a dance, like a club scene, which is awesome.
It's the fact that where it gets really dark is they end up going back and they basically commit all of those crimes to reset the timeline back. So I was kind of thinking, what Doc really should do if he respected the space-time continuum is he should probably go and get Clara and then, I don't know, strap her to a bunch of horses and then send them off the ravine.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mind was just getting a bit abstract there, but
no, it's true. Like I think the same. Like technically, all he should go and throw her back into the ravine. Love.
It'd be harder, but space time continuum and all that.
Yeah, got to save the future. But because again, butterfly effect, and everything. It's going to have that. It's going to have some impact. But that's not the only sort of. It's obviously going to be further changes because. Buford is obviously is humiliated as well. So does that not have an impact on potentially down the Tannen line? Could do, but Yeah, I like the fact they say that basically they introduce this wrinkle, and I mean, it's nice to have sort of to try and humanize Doc a little bit. Um, but this film, where the sort of some of the others have had, like especially the first one's had that sort of like human interest thing, like between Marty's parents. They try to introduce it with the third one, and it has. To me, it's fine, but it has less resonance. I'm way more about sort of like Marty trying to get back to the future, and his sort of showdown with Tannen towards the end, because the middle of this film really does lull. You know, you got the sort of the
Yeah.
town party and some other bits, and it sort of gives an excuse for a shootout. But other than that, like, not a great deal happens.
No, and I thought it was a bit contrived as well. The whole Clara falling out with Doc, because
Mm,
he says, he's from the future and whatever, and she thinks it's a bit of a line, because they're both into Jules Verne. Doc thinks it's really old, and she's like, "Oh, it only just came out a few years ago."
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a little bit contrived, that piece. And so, this woman that he's just met suddenly seems to become like the love of his life, like he's known her for the
Mm.
last 20 years or something. So he's gone to drink away his troubles at the saloon, but he can't handle his saloon. He
I,
can't handle his whiskey.
Yeah, I do like that moment. That is quite funny. But another thing is, he goes to her house and says, like, and tries to explain, like, I've got to go away. And she's like, well, where I can go with you? Like, she's obviously besotted with him as well. And I accept that in Hollywood, rom coms, sort of stuff like that sort of stuff, they can have that in movies. But again, this is a program where there's a simple fix to all this. If she doesn't believe him, he's like, all right, look, just come to my blacksmith, my smithery, and I'll show you something. Whips out the DeLorean and is like, look, here you go. Cool. We call it a car. Here's this thing called the flux capacitor. Not only that, but this one flies, and or did at least at some point. This is from the future. Like, there's nothing to argue with there, is there really?
You know what? I thought when you said take her back to the workshop, I thought you were going to say smack her over the head with a club and chuck her over the ravine.
Wow, you're still thinking of that dark future from
I think so, yeah. Your plan is much better and much less dark.
But again, like he could have just shown it, or she could have seen or she does eventually sort of see the DeLorean, doesn't she? She sees a wooden version of it and believes him like, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then another trope of this thing is how Doc likes his models that he does for plans, which are quite cool.
I think it's a great storytelling device as well, though. So it gives us the stakes. So we know exactly from seeing this little model recreation, we know what's going to happen. So I think it's great, that little bit.
Yeah, I like the fact that in both of them he apologises if it's not to scale, which is another great point. And Marty's like, it's fine, I won't worry about it. Yeah, so you have it's basically sort of that's the whole setup, isn't it? It sort of goes through, and the final thing is again going to be that showdown. They're going to leave before 8:00, so they can steal a train, because the decision is if they can get a train up to 90 miles an hour, they can push the DeLorean up to 88 miles an hour, and it can travel through time and go back to 1985. So that's what their plan is. So the plan is to steal the train before this showdown that's been arranged with Buford, and unfortunately, obviously following the breakup, Doc decides to drink a single shot and then passes out. It's very silly. But again, like like I say, it's a little contrived, because it's obviously sort of facilitates the whole shootout sort of moment.
But isn't it brilliantly executed, though?
Yeah, yeah.
It is on par with Only Fools and Horses, where he goes, play it cool, Rodney, play it cool, and he goes to lean on the bar, and the bar it's not there anymore, the ledge. I think the way, it'll be a stunt guy probably, just completely keels over into that table. I think it looks brilliant.
It's done timed brilliantly. And there's other bits as well, like you say, we've got to sober him up. And what they said, the barman says, "Jimmy, make some wake up juice."
Yeah.
And they put the sort of the funnel in his mouth and they pours it in, and he just run. They got the peg on his nose, and he runs out and puts his face in the horse trough.
Yeah,
And
they got the Tabasco juice and everything
yeah,
in there.
yeah. And I love the fact that the barman's like, when he runs out, and Marty's like, well, "He's not. Why is he not awake?" And they're like, "I don't know. That's just a reaction.
Yeah.
That's just the body reacting."
No, it is good that.
And again, so it does lead up to this sort of this showdown where it's going to be Buford Mad Dog Tanner versus Marty McFly, or Clint Eastwood, as he's now taken on the moniker
Yeah.
of the film, which is a great little nod as well. And so this is where you get the whole chicken thing again. He's learned his lesson. He's about being called out and all this other stuff. And then people are going like, they'll say that, what is it? They've got the three, because you've got the guy with the whistle kind of talk, haven't you? Who I think has been around in like voicing Disney films for forever and a day. And they say like, everybody, everywhere, I'll say that Clint Eastwood's the yellow belliest, coward in the West.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, why should I give a shit what you people think? Like, this is ridiculous. And it dawns on him, and then he finally has to go out to face him because they've run out of time. So what do you think about this whole shootout bit? How it all sort of it plays out in the end.
I think it's a brilliant homage, but as you were saying that, I was just wondering, how spaghetti westerns would have been different because, this young actor called Clint Eastwood,
Yeah.
everyone's just like, well, actually, we know Clint Eastwood from history, and he's got a yellow belly, so he'd have had to change his name.
Yeah, be named like Bob Eastwood.
Yeah. So no, I think it plays out well, and like I say, I of the westerns that I didn't like watching as a kid, Good, Bad, and the Ugly was one of them, and so I recognise the whole scene. I still think, as they say in Dumb and Dumber, what if they shot you in the face? I don't think it's a bulletproof plan, but no, it comes off quite well. He smacks Biff round the face, and again we get our kind of the villain of the piece, Mad Dog. He gets his comeuppance, and then we have a race to get back to the future, don't we? So again, it's brilliantly it's different, but it's exactly the same as the other two.
Yeah, it's always going to be this. It's a reiteration, like you say. It's the same story and over and again. That's why I think they're almost like perfect sequels, because it works perfectly as a trilogy, because the first film and the third film are pretty much the same in that you're trapped in history, you've got to get back to the future, but in different periods and with different stakes. You end up with a showdown with a Tannen. You've got, like I say, you've got to have some way of artificially generating energy to be able to get the vehicle back to, through time and all this other stuff. But the middle film is very different. It takes a real left turn, because it's actually it's not about having to travel through time because you're trapped. It actually, throughout the film, the DeLorean works perfectly. They go all over the place, and it's about something else. So I like the fact that it's a circle. It's a circle. The thing closes itself off and wraps itself up very nicely. But again, I remember watching this and always since, and always being like, if they're gonna have a shootout, like, Marty can't die, and technically as a hero, like, they can't have Marty killing Buford because he clearly has. There's a line for him to continue. So I was always like, how's he going to get out of this then without running away? And I think they wrap it up quite nicely with him sort of knocking out, and again, technically punching a Tannen in the face and learning a lesson. So in the first one, it's George learning a lesson to stand up for himself. But it's the opposite lesson, really, isn't it? It's like, it's almost like George learns to sort of become a bit of a hothead. But in this one, Marty learns to sort of chill out and not be such a hothead. So again, I don't know. They're quite clever in the way it's all stacked up, and there are pieces constantly sort of aligned in this sort of across this generations of a family.
Yeah, and I think I can't quite visualize it, but what you say about the perfect sequels, and the whole trilogy, I guess you've got almost I'm thinking like a three-dimensional Venn diagram kind of thing with the trilogies, and kind of all cross over, don't they? You go in between these different timelines, and not just to these same times, to the same exact places where we've seen
Mm.
before. And I think that is the brilliant thing, that it all, again, there's inconsistencies, and whenever you get time travel, there's always inconsistencies that
Yeah.
you can call out. But yeah, I do think it knits it all together really nicely.
Yeah, it does, and it plays it, and it's just all fun as well. That's one of the key things. It does all these clever little things, like you say, them playing with themes and tropes and sort of cycles of family and all this other stuff. Yet the other thing is, they're all just really good fun,
Yeah.
and they all have cracking endings. Because again, like this whole thing with the train at the end is ace. Um, it's my favorite part of the film. I love it when they hijack the train. The train driver's like, is this a robbery? And they're like, it's a science experiment.
That is good.
And then obviously they steal the train, and then they've hooked up the DeLorean, and it's sort of ready to go. And then Clara turns up. She gets on the train. She realizes that Doc was the one for her, and he was sort of being sincere and all sort of stuff. And you get this sort of thing of like the traversing all over the train onto the DeLorean, and it includes the hoverboard, and the music's fantastic. Like it's a cracking ending. It's another really good action set piece. That is just really well done and really good fun. I mean, what are your thoughts on the train sort of sequence?
Yeah, I think it does the same that the first one did, the same that the second one did. You get that
Mm,
sense that as every second moves forward, the stakes are really high. It's not just, we can have another go next week. They have to
mm,
do it in this moment, and if it doesn't work, that's it. The chance is gone. So I like how they build that tension, and again, I think the music helps with that, and the editing and everything, the way it's switching between the different shots, and I just think it is really great. But again, it kind of is the same as
yeah,
it's used the same ingredients as the first two.
yeah, it does. I mean, it's one of those things where it's the same thing repackaged in different ways, and I still love it. Like I can, a bit like you said early on. I mean, you said about the first Back to the Future film. It's one of those films that you can watch all the way through, go back to the beginning, and probably just watch over
Hmm.
again. Well, technically, that's what we've done by watching all three of them.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, yeah. I hadn't thought it like that, but
Um, but yeah, no, they do. They get Doc decides on a hoverboard, so a hoverboard gets to stay in 1885. Let's not worry about that so much. Um, but
that
Doc
gets a
saves,
bit Terminator, actually, doesn't it?
yeah, technology hiding in the past.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, Doc saves Clara. They literally hover off into the sunset, whilst Marty sort of gets up to 90 miles an hour and travels back through time. And we talked about PTSD before and events that could sort of traumatize you. He travels on the railway tracks, and then coming from the other direction is a big diesel locomotive, and
Yeah.
he gets out the car. I mean, even if it's a stunt actor, the way they do it, and he gets out of the way just in time, makes my parts of me sort of like contract every time I see it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think today it'll be just it'll just be CGI, wouldn't it? So
Yeah,
you have no doubts. But I agree, you're kind of left wondering, how the hell did they do that? Because it looks like that was a genuinely life-threatening stunt. And I'm sure
yeah,
health and safety wasn't quite the same in 1989 or whenever they shot this. But yeah, it does look a bit mad. But I think, to go back to one of my recent favorites in terms of terrible movies, I'll call out Samurai Cop.
mm.
There's a scene in that where basically the stunt guy, actually, I'll go back to the beginning. So this Indian guy is driving a truck and crashes and then catches on fire. And then clearly a Caucasian stunt guy comes out and he's on fire. And it is the two lead actors who run across and put him out. But you can actually see the stunt guy kind of looking round because, stunt guys are good at this, right? They
Yeah,
take all
yeah,
the risks, but they're pretty good at those calculated risks as well. Actors, not so good at it.
yeah.
You can see this guy's like, come on, you should have put me out by now. And you have to think, sometimes you are in actual peril when you're trying to create these great shots. And I don't know, it could be one of those where, were there that many, safeguards in place? I don't know. It does look genuinely dangerous, though.
It does. I mean, I'm assuming it's not a real car because it crumples like mad, which a DeLorean probably would have done. But like the engine's
Yeah.
probably been taken out. There's no fuel in it and that sort of stuff. But like I say, he dives literally feet away from this train over a hedge, and like I said, I'm thinking like shrapnel and glass and all kinds of things could be flying over that thing. But it looks good. It looks great. But that means the DeLorean has now been destroyed. Like Doc's gone and the DeLorean is destroyed. No more time travel. And in his Western get-up, he goes home and he meets up with Elizabeth Shue, and everything's back to normal. You see that the way everything that's been restored from the end of the first film is all there. They're all ready to go. And you get sort of like the wrap-up of the film is, again, this chance for Marty to have this car crash. Like you see this scenario play out that was mentioned in the second film. He has his car accident and that ruined his hand when he hit this Rolls Royce, and you see it play out. Like Flea from that you saw in the second film, Needles challenges him to a race at these traffic lights, but instead of going forwards and racing, he reverses and flips and spins the car around, which, in all honesty, is probably more dangerous.
I didn't see him check his mirrors.
Nope. But it does mean that he avoids the Rolls Royce. He doesn't have a car accident, and so that thing never happens. And so a different future is now possible because the piece of paper that Elizabeth Shue or Jennifer had in her pocket that said "You're fired" from 2015 is now erased. And they then go back and they look at the DeLorean on the floor, and then they now get return of Doc comes back. So what are your thoughts on all this? This sort of this nice, neat little tidy up at the end of 3.
Again, I take you back to the first time I saw it, and I was just thinking that the whole "you're fired" disappearing. So again, we've seen this same theme, haven't we, in this Back to the Future universe of artifacts changing before your eyes. It's a great little storytelling device, isn't it? And to have that callback to the second one, because you've almost forgot Jennifer's in the film, haven't you?
Yeah.
Really. But she did play that little nugget was there, and then reappears right at the end there. I'm just thinking, this is just so clever, to come up with this story and have it all neatly kind of tied together. Again, you're slightly older now, and you think about these things, and there's massive holes everywhere. But I still think, in essence, if you're looking at batting averages, I think they've done pretty well there. And I do like the way they wrap it up. I didn't think they had to bring the Doc back a third time from the grave. He could have just lived out his life. Because it almost makes you think, well, do you think there's going to be a fourth one? Because you've destroyed the DeLorean, right? Time travel is no longer a thing in this universe, but the Doc's now created this train, which is a time machine. So what else is he going to go and fuck up?
That's exactly what I thought. Well, more than that, there's a scene, because obviously he turns up on this time traveling train that I'm like, does that have to get you get all kinds of questions. I'm like, does that have to get to 88 miles an hour? Like, does that have how does that all work? Because obviously he created a flux capacitor in sort of steampunk, sort of Western technology, all this other stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm willing to accept it. He's then restricted to traveling on railway tracks. Surely, they can only travel in time to where railway tracks are, and you think, well, that's going to be difficult. You can't really go back before 1700, so you're really screwed. And then it takes off.
Yeah.
And I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, oh no.
If it can fucking take off, he doesn't have to build a train, surely.
That's exactly what I was like. If you've got this flying capacity, why not just make a bleeding plane?
Yeah.
Like something else. It's ridiculously, he's obviously gone through this process, and I'm like, this seems needlessly complicated. But But more than that, I'm thinking like they're still in Hill Valley. They're at this railway crossing. You've already seen the DeLorean come back, and people have seen the DeLorean, shunter across the bridge and stuff, and thought, well, that looks weird, and then seen it destroyed. How many people saw a locomotive take off and then disappear?
It was massive.
Yeah. Like, if there is a 4, like there's the story out of all this is like there was UFO sightings in 1985 when people saw a locomotive taking off and flying into and disappearing into thin air. That's the story. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't think it need. It's you sort of get the happy ending when he flies off on the hoverboard with Clara into the sunset. You sort of just assume he's going to be happy. It's fine. And I just think there'd have been better ways. Like, he's had a letter travel through time. They've sent a letter through the post office to 1955.
Yeah.
Why not do the same again and send him the picture and a note of him with his family saying, "I'm fine, I'm happy, thank you very much." I don't know. The ending's it's a cherry too much on the cake, I think.
Yeah, I think if I was like a self-centered person and a time-traveling douchebag, I wouldn't feel I wouldn't feel bad about traveling to a certain point in time when I can say hi to a mate who I've not seen in a very long time. If I was that self-centered time-traveling douchebag. The Doc, though, is such a fucking hypocrite about the space-time continuum. And he keeps worshipping that, but he constantly breaks it, by interfering with things. So, yeah, I think, we get the little bit that, he's got Jules and Vern and the sons, don't we? And again, it does give you a good, happy feeling, But again, I think... Oh, sorry, go on.
I want to throw something in about this bit, and this is a point that needs to be made about this. Doc Brown's in his 60s. Let's not forget that. Although they tried to he had a rejuvenation at the start of 2 when he came back to 2015. He's still in his 60s.
Yeah.
And so when he went back, this isn't the young 30s Doc Brown of the 50s. This is the old Doc Brown from the 80s. So he's gone down, settled down with this woman in her 30s and had a couple of kids. And he just sort of like, dude, like you were like in your late 60s at this point. That's all kinds of like, I don't know. It just made me feel like, again, clocking onto it this time, I'm like, those, at some point, I don't know how old, how that rejuvenation things work, but those kids are going to get to 10, 11, 12, whatever, and they'll be like, our dad's really old. Like,
yeah. Well, I think, again, I was never sure how old he was. As far as I was concerned, he was about 90, the first time I watched him, so it seemed ridiculous to me then. I hadn't really thought about it this time, just because I'd obviously seen it a few times before. But you're right. What I would say is, an older man with a much younger woman has replayed, in Hollywood for as long as Hollywood has been around, hasn't it?
Both on and off screen, I think.
Yeah. So I think it's not that out there. Now, I don't know if that's changing now. You don't see it on screen quite as much, but I think, again, certainly with the VHS Strikes Back, when we go back to the 80s and stuff and watch some of these movies, there's always, the girls are always 20-something. And the guys can be, you can have fucking Steven Seagal or someone running around and you're like, there is no way. If it's not in a movie script, there is no way you end up with that.
If you go back, I watched some films, like I go back to with these sci-fi films, we'll go back and watch like 50s films, 60s films and so on and so forth. Go back and you see some of these sort of like, B-movie sci-fi films, some with like, Troy McClure in The Simpsons.
Futurama?
No, it was Hi, I'm Troy
McClure. Sorry, I was thinking of the captain.
Space Captain. It's a similar thing. Those actors, those people exist in the 50s films where they're clearly in their like late 40s and early 50s, but like you say, they are bedding women in their sort of like early 20s, and even then, like you look at it now and you're like, this is really uncomfortable. It doesn't feel very good. It's a bit wrong. And then you want to say it carries on through to the 80s and 90s, but yeah, it is a bit of a Hollywood trope, but it might be changing. But yeah, they're a fine film. I just don't. This ending just feels a bit too far, step too far, in my opinion. There are better ways of doing it, I think.
I think you're right though. It could have all been so neatly wrapped up in a bow and just finished off. Doc's in the past. He lived out a great life with the love of his life. Marty's with Jennifer. The horrible future that we saw is not going to happen, and that's it. The end. And just that last little bit with the Doc coming back, it just asks more questions. I think, I don't think it was necessary.
A more satisfying ending would have been, you've seen the photo in the records of Doc stood next to the clock, and then obviously that gets changed because it becomes Doc and Marty stood next to the clock. There is an easy way of a follow-up scene of Marty and Jennifer in the middle of Hill Valley, they're celebrating. I don't know actually it'd be the centennial of the clock tower, wouldn't it? Because it'd be 100 years.
Yep.
And there could simply be some photos. They could could be walking through because the clock tower is so important to the whole story, and they walk past and there's an exhibit of photos of the clock being built. And then there's a photo of when it's finished, the first time the clock tower's finished, and there is Doc Brown and Clara with a couple of kids, and Marty's just like, he was happy.
Yeah.
That's a much more, a sweeter ending that doesn't keep involving fecking time traveling trains. I would prefer that ending. That's a much nicer ending for me. A sweeter, sort of more satisfying ending.
No, I agree. But, I guess it's one of those things that, in certain movies, they don't want to close it off. They kind of always want to leave the door open. I hope we don't have to, like Indiana Jones, see another fourth movie one day.
No.
We've just seen Bill and Ted, haven't we come back?
I've not seen that yet.
I've not seen it either.
I'm going to watch it, I think, But with this, I think, Christopher Lloyd is now in his, must be in his 70s. And,
they brought Peter Cushing back.
That's true, they did. But tragically, Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's disease, so it's...
I tell you what, though, have you seen the footage of Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. reenacting?
Yes.
By God. That
was
unbelievable.
It was a face swap, wasn't it? It was done as a sort of like a deep fake kind of thing. But yeah, it's amazing. Like that's the film you want to see. I don't want to see it, but I do. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. I must admit, Face Swap is my favourite app at the minute.
Yeah, I look great as The Rock. I'm just going to say it.
I've got to say, I do as well.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about that Rock footage. I've tried it with a few people. Unfortunately, everyone looks great as The Rock.
Yeah, the Rock is just, he's just The Rock.
I look pretty good as Prince as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. I honestly think someone said this to me there. We were talking about The Rock. I'm just going to say, we were talking about the Shazam and Black Adam and stuff he's doing. But someone said about The Rock and how sort of like, how successful he's been and all this other stuff, and how basically he's just a big chunk of charisma. And someone said, well, the world's always about equal and opposite reactions. Maybe that The Rock is sort of like the reaction to Donald Trump, or Donald Trump is the reaction to The Rock. I don't know. So he's like the anti Dwayne Johnson. So I'm sort of, maybe the universe is sort of like has to balance out.
It could be.
Way.
You reckon it's like a twins thing, where you try and create this genetically perfect human being, and that's The Rock, and then the shit that comes out is Donald Trump.
Quite possibly. I think that's what's happened. He's the Danny DeVito. The president of the United States is currently the Danny DeVito.
Yeah. It could well be that. But no, he's great, isn't he? But I tell you what, he's certainly taken his vitamins, isn't he? I saw him in the DC fandom the other week.
Yeah,
By God, he is as big as I've ever seen him.
the man does he eats his broccoli.
He definitely does.
Anyway, so wrapping up, we're going to pull this back into Back to the Future. But wrapping up Back to the Future, having sat back and watched this trilogy now, after however long, what are your thoughts? As a final thoughts then on this trilogy, what are your thoughts?
I think the overriding word is ultimately just fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned it before, and again, we can sort of poke a little bit of fun at some of the inconsistencies of time travel, and some of the things that just purely don't make sense, but you just kind of go along for the story. I think the cast is brilliant. I don't think they necessarily had to keep using the same actors, but that's almost like it almost becomes an in joke within the trilogy, doesn't it? So I'll kind of forgive them for that. The music is fantastic. It gives me goosebumps whenever you hear that. And I will say, I don't know why it is, but just kind of around that time, from the late 70s through the 80s, you just seem to have better, more iconic theme tunes for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little game with the kids. I have a Spotify playlist that I stick on random, and they have to guess which theme tune it is. And obviously, Back to the Future is on there. I do search for more modern ones as well, but they're just not as iconic. And so, just love the scoring throughout it. And I find it hard to think of any trilogy that beats this one. It is just great, and it does stand up. Again, I think for young kids now, it's difficult because the future is in the past. So you
Yeah.
just have to get your head around that, and the fact that 2015 isn't really what 2015 was. But for us and a whole generation of people, I think you can still go back to this and just really, really enjoy it.
No, I agree. I'd agree with that 100%. I think it's just so much fun. It is such a well done, thought out. I mean, like you say, there's some holes, plot holes, and some silly moments and character beats that sort of don't work. But as a whole trilogy, like I think this just stands up, and I think it stands up to not just viewing but critique as well. Like you can see parallels running through it. There are themes running through it, and this other stuff. So it's you can watch it for fun, and I recommend you do because they are incredibly fun films. But you can dig into this more. Like they're there to be debated. I mean, if you want to get into the whole thing about how time travel works, that's there, or this whole thing of sort of generations repeating the mistakes, that's there as well. So no, it's good. I honestly believe this is one of the best trilogies. Ever made. I think it's one of the most consistent and one of the most well thought out. Like they are three pretty much independent films that just work. And the cast are on fire. The music, as you say, is phenomenal, um, and they're just really good fun. So I do recommend anyone who hasn't seen these. And I'm going to guess that Mike that we've sort of we've mentioned before. We often sort of will raise up ideas, and he'll often say, "Haven't seen that." Mike, if you haven't seen Back to the Future, we're going to rectify that. So,
No, he's going to have seen Back to the Future, surely, because we
well,
talk about some obscure films
that,
that hardly anyone's seen.
that's true. I'm going to put it in the chat thing later on, though. I'm going to ask him. We asked that question.
I'm going to gamble. I'm going to say he must have seen this one.
Straight after this, I'm going to put it into the chat group and we shall see. And I'll come back to let people know. But yeah, no, I agree. I love watching this. It's they're about to do a 35th set of Blu-rays on like 4K Blu-rays, but also in the steelbooks and all this sort of stuff. So new editions are coming out all the time. It's well worth checking out. Some great special features on them as well, actually. But yeah, no, I've really enjoyed talking this. This is going to be the last retrospective I think I'm going to do this year. So I'm glad it was a goodie because there's some like you say, there's some series out there, franchises you get into, and it just sort of falls apart, and it never sort of ends well. I'm holding off doing Alien mostly because I don't want to watch Alien Covenant.
Yeah, that is a tough one, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
I think the first two are so brilliant.
yeah,
The first one though, there's one scene in particular where it's just clearly the alien is a dude in a suit.
yeah.
Which looks particularly bad.
Some of the special effects are a little bit iffy in times, but weirdly, I like the third one. I think I'm one of the few people that really enjoys the third one. I understand its flaws, but one day I'll get to that. I'll get to that franchise. But anyway, Dave,
Chris,
it's been.
close.
I was gonna say Chris. I was going to say something about Chris as well. Dave, it's been an absolute joy. But I do want to see if Chris has got. You've done Back to the Future. I'd like to see. I'd love to know what Chris has to say about 2 and 3, just because they do sort
I
of
think we
vary.
did two. I think he gave that the top score as well, and I think he, unlike me, is a bit of a fan of the westerns. So I
Oh,
think
really?
he actually quite likes it. So I think if we do that one, well, I'm not going to be the heel. I'm not going to be the bad guy. I think we'll probably gush over it in that one as well.
Yeah. Excellent. I'll look forward to that then. But one final part: where can people find Comics in Motion and VHS and all the other endeavours?
Yeah, well, stick to those two because
Yeah,
there's not typically I mentioned Venn diagrams. There's not many
yeah,
people who are into Love Island that are into comics and old movies. There are some, but not many. So, so Comics in Motion, you can get us on all the podcast catchers. Again, there's Chris and myself, we review the TV and movies, but as we mentioned at the top of the show, we've got all kinds of different offerings on there. We've got the superhero for dummies if you want to learn about characters, start to be knowledgeable about them and hold down a conversation at the comic shop if you so desire. We've got Tony's indie comic spotlight show, and that's got a great variety. And then you've got Max Byrne doing all the blockbusters from DC and Marvel. You've got Mike Burton's Star Wars comics in canon. And then the newest comics on trial, which is a whole load of fun, and also the VHS Strikes Back, where we go back and we look at a whole load of new movies. We kind of look at, kind of late 70s. Godfather was a little bit of an outlier. That was 72, but I mean, it's a Godfather in it.
yeah.
But typically late 70s to early 2000s. That's where we kind of look at that golden era of home video and probably a little bit of a weighting on the 80s. And we go back and we look if things stand up. A lot of them, like Back to the Future, really do, and some of them really don't.
Yeah. No, but I fully recommend go check out these podcasts. They're an absolute joy to listen to, all done with passion and by people that really are in the know. So well worth checking out. Especially the ones that I'm on. So there you go.
Yeah, you've not been on for a while actually. We need to get you back on.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, it's been a moment.
Probably not for Indiana Jones because there might be tears, but
Yeah, Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, and
Temple
Saw
of
Point.
Doom.
Yeah.
Actually, Chris, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, someone was giving Chris abuse over Indiana Jones the other day. They just gone back and listened to it. They were like, "What the fuck?" And he's not watched the Goonies. What are you doing?
Yeah, how dare you?
Call yourself a film critic.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. If you want to find out more about 20th Century Geek, you can find us. There is 20thcenturygeek.com, or you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all under 20th Century Geek. And of course, if you really love what it is we do in 20th Century Towers, help us keep the lights on. I have a Patreon page out there. Just go onto Patreon and search for 20th Century Geek is making a podcast. So it's 20th Century Geek on Patreon. Got a number of tiers, and I do a podcast every month where it's just me. We do a poll to see what the topic's going to be, and it's just called 30-minute thoughts. Me for 30 minutes thinking and talking about the topic that has been chosen. It's usually a nerdy kind of topic. If you can't afford that, and that's fine, why not go leave us a review on the podcast catcher of your choice, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is. Just leave us a review. Let us know what you think, whether it be a 1-star or 5-star. It doesn't matter. I just want to get the feedback, and it helps us get us up the charts. Other than that, thank you very much for listening. Dave, again, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
And we'll talk again soon.